Yes, hello, hello. I think this is a good time for us to get started. Welcome to Sip Social, our Flourish event this evening. We're so glad you're joining us for an evening of conversation, connection, and summer sipping. Tonight, we'll explore three white wines that deserve a spot in your glass this season, learning what makes each one unique and how to enjoy them with confidence. Whether you're a wine enthusiast or simply curious to discover something new, this is a relaxed space to ask questions, share insights, and connect with fellow members. And if you don't have wine on hand, no worries. You don't need a glass to participate and enjoy the conversation tonight. So settle in, get comfortable, and enjoy a refreshing evening together. Flourish events like these are made possible thanks to our dues paying alumna. Your continued support keeps our programming vibrant, relevant, and full of connection. If you haven't yet paid your dues or need a quick refresher, simply visit the Pay Dues tab on the Kappa website. We will be hosting a giveaway tonight for a couple lucky sisters. Terms and conditions of the giveaway are available on the event listing of the Kappa website. Now, you must be present to win, so if we do pull your name, please make yourself known in the chat or unmute yourself. Thank you so much. Before we dive in, let's get everybody warmed up and let's spread a little love with our first giveaway. We will be giving away a set of wine charms. These are from the Fleur Napa Valley, Kappa's official wine brand. They're seriously so cute. It's so nice that you're able to identify whose glass is whose when you're at your next soiree. You can see a map on the screen right now. Again, I know people have dropped their names in the chat. If anybody has just joined us, I don't want you to miss your opportunity to be entered into the giveaway tonight. You just need to drop in the chat your city or state. And as you can see, we've been watching it fill up with Kappa sisters from near and far. Now let's see where everybody's tuning in from tonight. The map is kind of all over the place. We have Kyle in Los Angeles, who's out here in I thought it was San Francisco. I'm sorry. Or Inda, Meredith. Hello, hello, Gerald in Albuquerque. Hello, Shelly in Wichita. We got Nicole in Dallas, so you're definitely near Christy. Allison in Houston. Nancy in Nashville. Who we got up here? Arlington Heights. Hi, Kathy. Who else? Hi, Tracy in New York. Hello, Katie in Pinehurst. Who's down here in Florida? Hi, Anna Marie. She's in Orlando. That's where we're going to be in 3 weeks for convention. Hi, Danny in Columbus. Hi, Kaylin in Newport. Ellen in Louisville. We've got ladies all over the map tonight. Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm not seeing anybody else dropping in the chat, so I think it's time to pull our first winner of the evening. And who is that going to be? Congratulations to Paige Whitcup. Are you here? Are you here? If you're not, I'm going to pull another name so that we can make sure that we get, uh, I'm not hearing anything. We'll make sure that we get somebody who is here right now. Who's it going to be? Second try, second try. Leslie Wood. I don't know if I saw your name. Hello? We're going to try for a third time's a charm. I'm not hearing anything. It's okay because that means somebody else gets another chance. Kathy Miller? Kathy Miller? I'm going to try again. I'm not hearing Kathy. We're going to put in another whirl. Maybe I need to blow on the wheel or something, give it some good luck. Lori Welter? I don't know if I saw Lori either.
I'm here.
Lori
Ah,
Welter, thank you for speaking up. I so appreciate that. It's hard for me to juggle in between, so thank you for unmuting yourself. Congratulations. I'm gonna make
thank
sure that I will email you tomorrow to confirm your mailing address so we can get you your wine charms. This
you.
is so Yay, thank you. And now let me introduce you to our bubbly host for the evening, Christy, a sister from TCU. Christy Mayfield spent more than 20 years leading global business development in the defense industry, navigating high-stakes client dinners, cross-cultural negotiations, and boardrooms around the world. But it was the moments around the table when wine was on it and confidence wasn't. That revealed a gap she couldn't ignore. So she built a solution herself. Today, Christy is the founder of SIP Society Collective and creator of the Social Power Skill and Empowered Social Capital Frameworks, a methodology that transforms practical wine fluency into executive presence, strategic relationships, and measurable confidence. Her approach is business first and judgment free, designed for women who want to command any room, glass in hand or not. Christy holds a WSET Level 3 with distinction, a Court of Master Sommelier's introductory certification, and an MBA. She is based in Fort Fort Worth, Texas. And yes, she's a Kappa from TCU. We're so grateful to have Christy with us this Flourish season and cannot wait to begin our sip social. But before we hand things over, Christy, we wanted to make sure that you knew the wine personalities of those joining us tonight. Let's see who they are. We have 20% who are chilled and relaxed. They're here for the sip and the good vibes. We have 32% who are smooth and classic. They appreciate a balanced, familiar favorite. We have 8% who are bright and bubbly. They are light, lively, and full of fun. And then at 26%, we have the bold and brave. They love big flavors and try new things. And then 14% identify as the curious and adventurous. They like to experiment and ask lots of questions. So, Christy, you're stepping into a space full of women who are showing up tonight excited to learn, connect, and have fun together. We're so grateful to have you here with us and can't wait to learn from you. It is all yours.
Thank you. And I am so excited because I actually know a few Kappa sisters who are on this call today. But thanks to everyone for taking time to spend the night with me here on this Flourish session. And most importantly, many of you submitted questions in advance and really great questions. So I'm not going to offer answers right now, but I will get to those later on and we'll try to answer as many as possible. But as Sophie said, I was a TCU Kappa. I've been involved with the chapter as the recruitment advisor. I've been on the alumni board. I served quite a bit of time as on the house board as the treasurer alongside the lovely Miss Vivian Mays, who's on, and she can attest I did fire myself 7 times, but she kept me on. But the reason I am here now, sitting in this seat talking about wine, is in my professional career, I spent more than 20 years in international business development in defense and global sales leadership. And the deals that I was in charge of, the campaigns that I led were multi-billion dollars with a B, not just an M, but primarily in Europe, but Latin America, Asia, but it didn't matter what I was doing. When I was meeting with my stakeholders, it was over lunch with an aperitif and a bottle of wine, late afternoons over a bottle of wine, dinners with a bottle of wine. Everywhere I went, wine was at the table. And I had a secret. I could negotiate, I could absolutely slay a contract, but I could not read a wine list. So I did what high performers do. And I went all in and I started getting my certifications, Quartermaster Sommelier Introduction, WSET 2 with distinction, WSET 3 with distinction. And I just kept going. I was voracious about any resource I could get about wine. But what I found after all of that studying, and it's like getting a PhD in something, is that those certifications were amazing and they serve a very valuable purpose. But they taught me how to talk to sommeliers. They taught me how to talk wine, but not to build the relationships that I needed to in my professional career or really in my social avenues. So, a little hint. I built what I needed, and we'll get to that a little bit later. In addition to that, I have a podcast, Everyday Sommelier. I'm a wine competition judge, and that's a ton of fun. If you've ever tried to effectively taste about 90 plus wines in about 4 hours, you'll know what I'm talking about. We do get to spit, it's legal in the wine world. But my goal tonight is not to talk about any of that, but really to help you walk away from this and feel like you are the woman who can walk into any room, to any event, and leverage wine to make you the most magnetic person in that room. And when it comes to Sip Society Collective, that's exactly what we are building. Wine confidence isn't necessarily about becoming a sommelier. It's really about mastering that social intelligence, about mastering your presence and the connections that wine creates, not just now, but it has done so for centuries. And as I mentioned earlier, wine is present everywhere. Deals are made, relationships are built, or power players sit. And if you don't know the language, and what if you don't? And we're not taught this in school. This is not a language that's readily available. So, through Sip Society Collective and our social power skills framework, this is where we are building the gap for high impact women. Traditional wine education tells you what wine is. It just doesn't tell you how to use it in those moments that matter the most. So before we wrap up tonight, I will be sharing a little bit more about Sip Society and how to continue to stay connected if you're interested in learning more. But who's ready to get the party started? It is summer in Texas. It is hot. And it is vacation time. Your suitcase may or may not already be packed. You may or may not have big travel plans. But tonight, we are going to go on a journey through three historic wine regions and learn about three very significant wines that you might not ever have heard of. We're going to make three stops. First, we're going to start in northern Spain along the Atlantic Ocean, and we're going to the Basque country to talk about chocolate. Then we are going to go almost due east to the southern coast of France along the Mediterranean Ocean to Languedoc, where Picpoul de Pinet reigns supreme. And then, you can grab a yacht or a cruise liner or a plane and pop over to the Greek island of Santorini, where Assyrtiko is the wine for the day. So whether or not you're sipping along with me tonight, I'd love to know. I mean, how many of you have a pick pull? How many have a chocolate or an Assyrtiko? Well, I'm going to be the flight attendant tonight. Buckle those seatbelts and let's take off and land in the Basque country along the Atlantic coast of northern Spain. And we are going to talk about chocolate, which is it's a revival wine. And the stories that we're going to talk about tonight, I want you to be able to translate those into every aspect of your life. But this story is about a wine. So think of yourself in a scenario where you are getting pressure to be somebody or something that you're not. And instead, you stood firm and you decided to become more of yourself. Well, that is the story of Chokli. So picture yourself, whether you envision it closing your eyes or maybe you've been there, but the Atlantic coast of northern Spain is not sun-drenched beaches. It is rugged. It is lush and green, steep, craggly, rocky slopes. The northern part of Spain in this region is called Green Spain because it is just that. It is wet, it is green, it is lush, and all of those winds coming off the ocean are very intense. And the vineyards, because it's not flat rolling hills like you see behind me, these are steep hillside vineyards that look out over the Bay of Biscay. So when you look at it, you think, why on earth would you grow grapes there? But this region, the Basque country, is truly one of the proudest and most fiercely independent cultures in all of Europe. They have their own language. It's called Euskara, Euskara, and there aren't any relatives. I mean, there's nothing like it anywhere else in the world. And the wine they make, chocolate, is just as singular as that culture is. So, from a translation perspective, chocolate, and this is important because it really reflects what this wine was created for. It roughly translates to enough for the house. And historically, it was a regional wine. It wasn't meant for export. It wasn't meant to be sent over here in containers on ships to the US, not really to be, distributed other than those who consumed it right in their backyard. But in the mid to, say 1950s, 1970s, this wine almost disappeared. And the reason was this. Culturally, wine lovers were veering towards something bigger and bolder. And if you look at the map and you see where the Basque country is, just below that is our regions like Navarro, Rioja, Ribera del Duero, where big, bold red wines, Tempranillo and Grenache reign supreme. And if you go just up the coast into France, you hit Bordeaux, where varietals like Cabernet and Merlot and Cab Franc, big reds, are what produce those beautiful Bordeaux blends. And that's what people wanted. Nobody wanted this light, slightly fizzy, fresh and crisp, low alcohol wine. So it almost disappeared. But thankfully, there were a handful of producers who said, you know what? We can try to be like them, but we'll know we'll never be like them. So they dug their feet in and said, we have something unique. We have something special. We have something that the world needs to know about. So they upped the game. And instead of trying to be something that they weren't, they went all in on what they were. And the world responded. So today you can see chocolate on wine lists in Tokyo or London, even here in Fort Worth, Texas. And I love seeing them on the list. But it's still a very unique and small production wine. So, for example, the wine region, that Basque wine region, produces about 3 million bottles. 3 million bottles sounds like a lot, but it's not. So 3 million bottles a year. So comparison, how many of you have heard of Yellowtail? Yellowtail as a brand produces somewhere between 11 and 13 million cases, which translates to 130 to 160 million bottles. So 3 million bottles or 160 million bottles. It is tiny production. And so it is a rare gift. If you can find it, buy it. But this region is kind of defying all odds when it comes to the ideal places to grow grapes. Unlike many other crops, wine and grapevines like adversity. The better the wine means the more adverse the situation or the place that the wine was grown. They don't like lush, fertile, nutrient rich, moist soils. They want they do best when they have to fight to survive. So that means that the harder they have to work to survive, the more concentrated the grape flavors are, and that translates to better wine. So here we are in this green Spain where they get 60 plus inches, 60, not 16, 60 plus inches of rain a year. It is one of the wettest regions in the world, and grapevines hate to sleep in wet soil. Roots start to rot. And then on top of that, with that wet, moist air, grapes can rot. They get fungus, they get molds, they start to rot, and you can lose a whole crop over that. But the innovative winemakers and farmers in this region said, you know what? This is where we're growing grapes. This is what we're going to do. So instead, if you see behind me these lush rolling hills and perfectly aligned rows of stakes and wire trellises, in the Basque region, they use what's called the Peral system or pergola trellis. And these are big, high arches that the grapevines grow up, and the leaves and the vines cover the outside, and then the grape bunches grow down through the top. And so they're protected from the harsh rains. And so think about it like your twinkling lights out on your patio. They grow underneath. But what that does is all of that heavy wind from the Atlantic blows in and blows right through, and it creates like this natural air conditioning, keeping all of that moisture off the grapes so they don't have fungus or mold or rot, and also allowing them, because they're putting the vineyards on these steep hillsides, the water rolls off, just rolls right down the slopes, and the vines, because that moisture isn't staying in the soils underneath them, they're able to stabilize and grow in these completely unattainable landscapes that you would never want to originally think about putting vineyards in. But because they're steep, they're craggy, they're dangerous. It's hard to tend to the vines. It's even harder to harvest these grapes. Think about being on a steep slope and reaching way above your head to pull those grape bunches off of that pergola. So you can't use machines. It all has to be hand done. But that's part of the beauty. That's part of the culture of the wine in this region. And you're not going to see traditional grape varieties like Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling. They have native grape varietals such as Ondarabi Zuri, which is a white grape, Ondarabi Zetaria, Ondarabi Belza, which is a black grape, because you can get a rosé or a red chocolate. But these are grapes that you do not find anywhere else in the world. You might find a vine here or there, but nobody else is growing them for grape or for wine production. And just as we have Napa Valley, Sonoma, Finger Lakes, Bordeaux, other wine regions around the world, in this area, there are three specific wine regions that are designated as Denominación Origen Controlada, which means effectively that they have to follow certain rules and regulations and how they not only farm the grapes, but how they make the wines. There's Guitarriaco Chocolina, which is on the coast, Bizcaico Chocolina. So are you starting to hear that this very unique language? And then Arabaco Chocolina, which is more inland, so a little bit bolder wines. But what makes this culture so special is the traditions. In addition to farming and training their vines on the pergola, I know it's going to be a little hard to see, and I'm going to try to do it to where you can see it, but they don't just pour wine in normal glasses like we do, just pour it in. They hold the bottles way high, a foot or so above simple glasses like the one I'm holding today. Just a wide rim, low, simple glass, not with a stem, not with a pretty bowl. And they do this, the process is called escanciar, but it's not meant to just be theater or showcasing. It's really to enhance that little bit of effervescence in those wines and expose all of the pretty flavors and aromas inside. So, who of you are drinking a chocolate tonight? Anyone? Is anyone? All right. Well, let's get back to the presentation and let's talk about the flavors and aromas. This is a really pale. Sometimes you look at a chocolate and you think there's not any color whatsoever. It's almost as white as water, but it has beautiful citrus and green apple and even maybe that crisp white peach. But what makes it so unique and special is that proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, is that sea spray, those fresh herbaceous flavors that you get in these just ripe grapes. And the acidity like makes it sing. They are bone dry. There's not a single drop of sugar remaining after these wines are made. They're super lively and they get a little bit of that fizziness. They call it pétillance or frizzante. But the fun part about it is if you really close your eyes and think about it, there is this beautiful saltiness, a little bit of salinity that's come from all of that salt water that's blowing in from the ocean onto these grapevines. But my favorite part about chocolate is it's a really cool climate. It's hard to get grapes to ripen. And because of that, they have very low alcohol. So here's your little science lesson for the night. There is a simple formula in making wine. It's a lot more complicated, but we're going to keep it simple. Sugar, which is the amount of sweetness or sugar, residual sugar, grams of sugar in that grape, plus yeast, and yeast can be either in the vineyard, it can be on the grapes, or you can add it. So sugar plus that yeast equals alcohol. The yeast eats the sugar and turns it into alcohol. So the lower the amount of sugar on those grapes when they're harvested translates to lower alcohol. So if you can barely get those grapes ripe, you're always going to get a light, really light alcohol wine in the 10.5 to 11%, 11.5% range. To me, that makes it amazing for summer because it's super light, it's super bright acidity, and to me, that's the whole point. So grab a glass, and because it's low alcohol, you might even be able to afford that second one. But in that region, they pair it with the local cuisine, these little snacks called pinchos, uh, all kinds of seafood and oysters and these briny cheeses that the region makes. But one of my favorite pairings is with spicy Asian food. So think that spicy Vietnamese, spicy Thai food, any kind of spicy Asian food, because you've got that bright acidity and then that little bit of salinity or saltiness I talked about makes it the perfect match. So, when you're ever faced with a situation like chocolate, I mean, it almost disappeared. We almost did not have chocolate to talk about tonight. But because of the determination and the region's willingness to make it be its own thing, they didn't want to make it higher alcohol. They didn't want to let the grapes ripen and try to be something else. They didn't want to try to expand the volume into something that they couldn't deliver. The revival happened when locals said, "This is special. We need to bring this to the world, not compete with what the rest of the world is trying to make, but really lean in to something unique and special that represents our region." So when you are out and about and you do see a chocolate on the wine list, what do? Order it. And you can tell that story. This wine comes from the Basque region of Spain along the Atlantic, and it's small production, only 3 million bottles. Reference those 130, 160 million bottles from Yellowtail. And it is exclusively drunk almost all right within 50 miles of where it is made. And about 20 years ago is when it really started to have the turnaround. And that turnaround was from a few very determined people who wanted to continue with the beautiful culture of this wine. So, if you've ever been in a position where somebody's asking you to be something different than you are, push back, be like Chocolate, and be yourself. So let's leave Northern Atlantic and Spain behind, grab a train, grab a car, and we're going to head almost due east to the Mediterranean. And we are going to land in the Languedoc region of southern France. And the next wine we're going to explore is called Picpoul de Pinet. And de Pinet, Pinet is the region. Now, this wine has a lengthy history. This wine has roots back 2,000 years when the Romans built a road from Rome all the way through southern France into Spain. And yet, this wine didn't even come into really major recognition until 13 years ago. So think about that. It's been around for 2,000 years, but only 13 years ago did it really get global recognition. So here we go. The Atlantic, all of that beautiful green, lush 60 inches of rain, that's behind us. And we are moving into sunny southern France, intense sunlight. Mediterranean breezes coming in. Again, you've got that salt air influence, but the sun is bright. The sun is intense. The air is dry. It is no longer that wet humidity. And the landscape, instead of being that lush greenery, and instead of being craggy, steep slopes, this is rolling hills of rosemary and thyme and all kinds of herbs. And that whole collection is called garrigue. And in addition to that, where Picpoul, the primary region for Picpoul de Bidet is, it's not right on the beach. It's not right on the Mediterranean. There's a little strip of land and a saltwater lagoon that separates it. And this saltwater lagoon is famous for its oyster farms. So visualize that. You've got this intense sunlight, these rolling hills, and all of these fields of beautiful herbs and these wild, craggly vines of Picpoul to Pinet. Now, just like chocolate had a name, had a reason for its name, Picpoul means lip stinger in French, and it was actually named for the effect that it gives to your mouth. So, how many of you guys have Picpoul in your glass? Well, that's my next one, but I forgot to bring the bottle with me, so I'm gonna have to wait till after this call to grab mine. But let's go back and talk about how it got there. I mean, the Romans brought these vines from Italy into southern Spain. But today it's almost exclusively in Spain. You don't see Picpoul in Italy for the most part. And today, instead of that ancient Roman Via Domitia road, it's the A9 highway. But vines were planted way back 2,000 years ago. And we started to see all of that documentation in the 1300s, 1400s, 1500s. But by the 16th century, this grape had earned its popularity. And the French royals recorded this as one of their favorite and most noble of varieties. So we think about France and we think about Chardonnay, we think about Pinot Noir, but Picpoul de Pinet has always been one that the French royals absolutely loved. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's been around for 2,000 years. But in order to get recognition in the European Union, even before the European Union was formed in France, each of the European regions have very strict wine regulations and very strict classifications. And so to get that classification of a designated wine region or appellation origine contrôlée, which is AOC, you'll see that AOC or AOP on labels. That means that that has been a designated region because it's special for whatever reason. And this region is special because of Picpoul. But it didn't get that until 2013. So it took 2,000 years for this grape to get that recognition. But that gap is where, for us, value lies. I forgot to mention chocolate. You're normally going to see bottles of chocolate between $20 and $30. Even though it's so unique and so rare, it's a tremendous value. The same goes for Picpoul. It's a tremendous value wine. You can typically find these around $20. But let's talk about some of the adversity. We talked about the adversity of chocolate. Let's talk about the adversity of Picpoul. First and foremost, this region is hot. And Picpoul as a grape has a very thin skin. Now, you're like, okay, what does that have to do with anything? Well, the thinner the skin means it's going to ripen really fast. So some grapes have very thick skins, like Cabernet Sauvignon. It has a very thick skin and it takes a long time to ripen. When you have a thin skin grape, it ripens very quickly. So let's go back to that formula. Sugar plus yeast equals alcohol, right? When sugar rises and grapes get more ripe, the adverse thing happens with acidity. It goes away. It starts to decrease. So you have this like inverse effect. However, there are a few grapes, such as Picpool, that even as it ripens, even if it's grown in really, really warm climates, it can still maintain that bright level of acidity, which makes it the perfect wine for that warm southern France. And of course, the perfect wine for us to explore on our summer journey. It is truly a biological marvel because any other red or white grape that was growing in this same region, in those same vineyards, would lose that acidity and be really big and rich and full, where Picpool is bright and light and juicy. So that natural acidity is maintained even though those Mediterranean summers are quite hot. So this is a super rare thing. So one of the questions that was asked is, the different styles of Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, and Pinot Grigio. So I'm going to use that reference right now to explain how climate can make such a difference in a grape. So has anybody been to Paris? So just southeast of Paris is a wine region called Chablis. It's part of Burgundy. And the grape that's grown there is Chardonnay. But it's a cold wine region. I mean, it's some years it struggles to ripen those grapes fully. And because of that, that Chardonnay grown in that region is really bright and has a very high level of acidity. It makes your mouth pucker, it makes your jaws clench. Now, think about that compared to who's had a Napa Valley Chardonnay. It is dramatically different. These are big, full. They coat your mouth. It's like drinking whole milk versus drinking lemonade. They taste completely different. And that's because it's a dramatically warmer climate. And because it's warmer, the grapes ripen, and Chardonnay is not a grape that holds on to its acidity. So Picpool is a complete unicorn because it maintains that acidity no matter what level of heat, warmth, or ripeness. And it has become so prominent, it is now about half of all the white wine production in the Languedoc region. And other regions are taking note. You are seeing Picpool being grown in Texas, California, Australia. Many regions are adopting it because it can thrive in these warm climates and still be fresh and bright and crisp. So in the glass, you're going to get that citrusy lemon, lime, and grapefruit, and green apples, and white peaches. But just like we saw in the chocolate, there's this beautiful herbaceousness, these herbal notes coming from growing amongst all of those wild thyme and lavender and fennel and all of those herbs, that garrigue we talked about, but paired with that beautiful high crisp acidity. And because of the influence of the Mediterranean and that saltwater lagoon, you're getting this lovely saltiness or salinity, same as we got in chocolate. That's a common thread between these two. And of course, then there's that sting. Don't forget that lip sting or the name of Picpool. So those are some of the unique characteristics about this region. Now, 50 years ago, 10 years ago, we thought of Languedoc as being kind of cheap bulk wines. These are your table wines that you see on, the restaurants of all the bistros. They had no identity. They had no real, well, before the AOC, they didn't really even have a culture. But what's changed is that by getting that designation, positioning Picpool as something that was of quality and worth investing in, and creating this unique wine around it, Picpool is now gaining major popularity. It was an undervalued asset, and it's finally getting the recognition that it deserves. It only took 2,000 years, but it is definitely getting there. So now we're going to stop at our last and final part of our journey. And let's take a yacht, or we can take a cruise ship or plane, and we're going to hit Santorini, Greece, which has a 3,005 years of continuous production of the grape Assyrtiko. Now, this is a volcanic wine that has gone through more adversity, and I just love this story. So, if you've ever been to Santorini, it is dramatic. It is unlike any other place on Earth. It's not officially an island, it's actually a collapsed volcano. It collapsed around 1600 BC, and it created the center, like the big dip in the center of this island. And the culture of the Minoans who were populating it, that it basically decimated this culture. But what remains are these steep cliffs of black and red volcanic rock, lava, basalt, all of these very porous rocks and very, very dark. But then the cities, the culture, the architecture are these beautiful whitewashed villages on the edge of these steep cliffs, whitewashed with blue roofs, magically reflecting off of the Aegean Sea. And it is probably one of the most extraordinary wine terroirs or wine regions anywhere in the world. So, has anybody ever been there? And if you have, you probably have had a Sirtico. You just didn't know it. Well, tonight you're going to know exactly what you're drinking and why it's so unique. So, as I mentioned, this wine has been growing there for 3,500 years. It has gone through so many civilizations, the Minoans, the classic Greeks, the Byzantines, Venetians, Ottoman empires, all of these civilizations. But the one thing that has always continued is that this vine has been there for all of it. Now, when we think about that volcanic soil, so anybody have a pumice stone? We've all seen lava rocks. They're full of holes, they're porous, and they're really rough. We probably exfoliate our feet for summertime with them. Well, if you think about trying to grow something in that, I mean, you don't see big, luscious trees. You see a lot of scraggly shrubs and like probably a weed here or there, but the landscape looks more like the moon or Mars than it does a beautiful, lush island out in the middle of the Mediterranean. And the reason is that volcanic soil. But the beauty of that volcanic soil, I'm going to tell a little story. So back in the late 1800s, was a time when there was a lot of exploration all over the world. Scientists and explorers, we were passing, flora and fauna and plants and bugs and animals back and forth all over the world. We were exchanging things with Europe. We gave them some of our grapes. They gave us some of their vines. Well, their vines came over here and they just didn't really survive. I mean, if you think about some of our early presidents, Thomas Jefferson consistently was trying to grow vineyards, but they kept dying and nobody could figure out why. Well, then, we sent some of our grapes over to Europe and we gave them a gift, an unexpected gift. And what we didn't know at the time, nobody knew at the time, was that most of our native grapevines, they are immune to this lovely little bug or louse called phylloxera. So we didn't even really know it existed. However, when we took our vines over there, that phylloxera said, "Ooh, look, there's all these new vines, all these new grapes and vineyards that we haven't explored." And they started to destroy Europe's major vineyards, nearly decimated the European wine industry. But fortunately, a Texan said, "Hey, here's our grapevine roots, graft your grapes onto it," and we saved their industry. There's a lot of lore that goes along with that, but the story is real. But what happened in regions like Santorini, that root louse, phylloxera couldn't survive. So those vines were protected. And what that means today is that we have vines that we get this beautiful wine off of that are 200, 300 years old. And those are the original roots, the original grapes, ungrafted and very rare in this world to find that in the wine world today. So phylloxera was destroying everything everywhere except in Santorini. Those grapevines were completely untouchable. So you've got the soil of pumice and lava and all of that dark basalt. And you think about most things can't survive, but grapevines love adversity. And the grapevines there, they seemingly wouldn't be able to grow. The roots have to dig down 50, 60 feet deep into that volcanic rock to find nutrients, to find water to survive. And what that means is that there's not a lot of grapes growing on these vines because it takes a lot of energy to grow very little vines, but that gives them super concentration and makes them some of the most beautiful wines in the world. But what I absolutely love is that this the soil is not the only adversity. There are these winds, they're called the Meltemi winds that come off of the Aegean Ocean and they don't stop. They blow morning, they blow noon, they blow night, they blow in the middle of the night. And when you think about like the vines growing in the field behind me, beautiful rows, stakes and wires, not even the trellises we talked about in the Basque Country. But if you look in the bottom corner of the chart at that basket and those grapes inside, 3,500 years ago, farmers realized that by wrapping the vines around themselves in a basket shape and allowing those grapes to grow inside the basket, so keeping everything low so the winds just blow right over it, these grapevines can survive. Now, when you see a field of this, it really looks more like Jurassic Park than a vineyard, but it allows this amazingly harsh region to be able to grow some beautiful vines. And unlike the Basque region with 60 inches of rain a year, here we're getting just inches. It's one of the driest regions in the earth. So we think about how diverse that is. But the one other thing is that salt air blowing off of the Aegean and the Mediterranean again brings that lovely sense of salinity. So this solution, these baskets are called Koulura, K-O-U, excuse me, Koulura. And they've been around for 3,500 years, and that is how the wine region has survived. What makes it unique as well is that volcanic soil doesn't only make it very difficult to grow, but it also gives wines this flinty, smoky sensibility. So if you have a Assyrtiko in your glass, close your eyes, take a sip, and see if you can sense that because it's very, very unique to wines that grow in volcanic soils. Excuse me. Now, unlike the pick pool and unlike the chocolate and unlike 97% of wines ever made on the planet, Assyrtiko can age. It can age 10, 20 years because of that vibrant acidity that it maintains. So the common thread between all of these regions is that acidity is key. But here acidity can mean that the wines can age for a really long time. But unlike the other regions where the wines are typically just dry, there is a beautiful dessert wine called Vinsanto that's made from Assyrtiko. And what they do is they take the grapes and they spread them on these, mats out in the sun so they become almost like raisins. And then they press just a little bit of juice off of what's left of those grapes and they ferment that. And it gives these luscious, really, it's almost like honey. It's like syrup. They're very thick, very dense, beautiful sweet wines. So if you ever get a chance to have a Greek Vinsanto, try it. It will be one of the most mind-blowing wines you've ever tried. But Assyrtiko, again, a lot of adversity, high acidity, and a really, really hot climate. We are starting to see Assyrtiko grown in the US, the Lodi region out in California. Some are predicting that Assyrtiko could become the white grape of Lodi within the next 20 years. So we're starting to see other people take note of these wines that a few years ago weren't even on anybody's radar. So excellence can come from the biggest adversity, impossible conditions, the highest constraints, you know, whether it's too much water or not enough water, high winds, desolate, isolated regions. Adversity in wine can be what makes some of the most beautiful expressions. So when you're thinking about your own life, your own career, what do you do when you face adversity? Dig deep. Put your heels into the ground, just like these wines, and create your own path and shine because of being tenacious and unwilling to let the world get the better of you. So, all of these wines come from places that we normally wouldn't think about as being great wine growing regions. But I'm going to kind of wrap it up after taking some questions. So, Sophie, do you want me to take some of the questions that we had, or are we already starting to get some questions?
I believe that there are two questions that came in while you were talking. So let me. Somebody asked, is a sorry, the first wine that starts with a T. I don't want to butcher it. And
Chocolate. Just think
at
of it like
all,
chocolate. Chocolate.
is it at all similar to slightly effervescent Portuguese Vinho Verde wines?
It's somewhat similar. Yeah, very different grapes, but yes, I mean it's a little bit similar. And if you think about like the northeast part or yeah, northwest part of Spain, Reis Baixas, and that northern part of Portugal, very similar, Atlantic and very, very wet. But Chocolate is the very unique varietals that are only grown in that region. But yes, great point.
Awesome. Thank you. I guess I totally forgot to mention my little blurb being like, if you guys have any questions, please drop them in the
Oh
chat
yeah.
for Christy. Reminder, we can't take super specific questions that are relative to like specific wines and suggestions, but Christy has allowed us to share some of her information to be able to reach out to her tomorrow or at a different point if you have specific wine questions that you would love to hear from her. So that will be in the wrap up email tomorrow, and we'll be dropping some of her information in the chat tonight if they are on top of mind. But your questions, just drop them in the chat and we can ask Christy. She has some of the questions from registration too. So,
Absolutely.
um, Danny is asking if Vinsanto is, um, do you Vinsanto?
Yes.
Is that how
Yeah.
it's
Like
spelled? And
wine of the saints. Vin,
okay,
wine, Santo, like wine of the saints. So Vin Santo. Sometimes it's two words, other times it's one word, but that's correct.
thank you. Perfect.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
want to share some of your answers
Yeah,
from the
exactly.
questions, that'd be great.
So I love this one about wine aging, wine storage, and ideal drinking windows for different varietals. So the truth is, only 3 to 5% of wines made in the world are actually meant to age. Most of them should be consumed within 2 years of buying them, or 2 years of when you see. And I don't have a late one with a label on it with me, but from the vintage date. So typically buy it and drink it very quickly. There are a few wines that can age, and that those are wines that certain regions they'll have high acidity. For red wines, high tannin. A lot of sweet wines like the Vinsanto can be aged for years or decades. But most wines are really not meant to age. Storage, even if you don't have a wine refrigerator, you can store wine as long as you have a constant temperature, even at 72 degrees, dark, constant temperature, and then, of course, it's recommended to lay it on its side. So find a closet under your bed. Don't put it on, like my house does not have good insulation on the exterior walls, so you can feel the heat during the summer. So I would never put my wines in a closet that's on my exterior, but on the interior of my house, it works perfectly well. It's consistency of temperature and no exposure to a lot of vibrations and no exposure to light. Do not whatsoever put your wines on top of your refrigerator because one, you're exposing it to heat, and two, the vibration of your refrigerator can really damage your wines. So that is one. And then there was lots of questions about wine etiquette and wine education opportunities. Connect with me. I can share Sip Society Collective. I can talk about, I do teach WSET classes 1 and 2 here in Fort Worth. But I'm more than happy to provide you with resources if you want to connect with me. And I know they're going to share my contact information. So, if any other questions come through?
Yes, somebody asked, this member lives in Napa and sees so many vineyards throughout the valley just completely ripped out. Do you happen to know what's going on with the market?
Yeah, so the wine industry is going through has been going through a downturn for about 6 years now. And you can predict lots of different things. I mean, people say, the younger generations aren't drinking. The older generations are, the baby boomers are the ones who are drinking all the wines, and, people are getting healthier, and there's, all kinds of debates on that, which we're not going to go into tonight. But here's my position. So this is an opinion. This is Christie's opinion. Is I think we got in the wine world, we got too pretentious. We tried to become so aloof and make wine something that was above everyone. We made it too complicated. We made, talking about wine became just like, again, a foreign language. And wine to me is like the most beautiful connector of people. So my vision and the reason I'm building a community of women around wine is I want to bring people back to wine because the stories we told tonight, I could go on for hours, days about the stories of wine and the families making this beautiful liquid out of a simple grape. So I think the wine industry is has some tough roads ahead, but we are and California has been overproducing for quite a while, so there's just not somebody to buy as many grapes as have been grown out there. So we'll start seeing some settling, but to me, that's something the wine industry as a whole needs to embrace wine for everyone.
Yes. Somebody asked when you were talking about vibrations earlier about, I believe it was storing wine, why is the vibration an issue?
Um, it can wine's an organic product, right? And so that vibration can separate things, especially like red wines. Over time, if you've ever had an aged red wine and you have sediment at the bottom of the bottle, that's because the some of the pigments start to settle, and then also the tannins start to join, and as they become heavy enough, they start to fall out. And so that's a lot. That's what that settlement sediment is. It's not dirt or anything bad. You can drink it. It's not tasty. So it like the vibration over exaggerates that. So you really want your bottles to just be still and constant. Think about stillness and constant and dark. Still constant and dark.
Thank you so much for answering all those questions this evening. You were so amazing and so informative, and I just feel like I learned so much. So thank you so much, Christy. I'm so
Yes.
excited that we got to bring this event and community together. To wrap up the evening, it's time for our final giveaway. Tonight's prize is a wine cooler bag from the Fleur Napa Valley. We're so excited for somebody to be able to have this fun item. So just drop in the chat, what is something from Christy's presentation that surprised you? I feel like we all learned a lot. For sure. I know I learned all three names of these new wines that I am interested in, and that wine can also come from volcanic dust. I didn't know that could be a node that I would have in some wines. That's crazy. So just drop in the chat. That's going to put you in for the spinner to be able to win how many wines there are in the world that I've never heard of. That the
There's
difference
over 1,000 in Italy alone, just so you know.
the difference in the weather on the grapes, the vines grown into the basket shape, the basket vines, the Greek grapes, wines I've never heard of and now interested in. Never heard of these wines. I love that one grows in volcanic soil. Me too. I'm extremely intrigued by that. Two new grapes I haven't tasted, Spain and Greece. Learned a lot. It surprised me to think about the development of all the grapes and wines. Learned a lot about these different wine grapes, the different growing formations in different regions. Growing by the growing method, the Greek wines are wonderful. She's visited Santorini, so this was super special for her. Oh my goodness, thank you guys for all these great
Yes.
answers. I think it's time to pull our winner. Who's it going to be? Who's going to win this beautiful wine cooler? It's going to be great for the summer for having these new wines that Christy talks about. Kate Coggin, are you here? Okay. I'm going to spin again because I don't think I see your name or hear you speaking out loud. But let's try again. Let's try again. Who's it going to be? Oh, Kathy, I already pulled you out earlier. I don't think you're here. I'm going to try somebody else. Let's see. Let's see. That's crazy that I pulled the same name
I
twice.
know.
Kathy Richardson, are you here? Catherine, sorry. Catherine?
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, Catherine, thank you so much for unmuting yourself. I very much appreciate that. Congratulations. This wine cooler is going to be yours very soon. I'm going to email you tomorrow to confirm your mailing address so we can get it to you right away.
Thank
Now,
you.
of course. Now, what a fun night we had this evening with Christy together at tonight's Sip Social. Thank you for spending time with us, taking time to slow down, connect, and explore white wine pairings made for such a special Flourish gathering. A huge thank you to Christy for leading us through a thoughtful and engaging experience. Christy, your warmth and approachable teaching style made exploring white wine feel easy, welcoming, and enjoyable for everyone here. We're so grateful you shared your time and expertise with us.
Thank you for having me. This has been just a joy. And as we were talking even before tonight, with all of the great questions coming in, I said, I definitely want to be available. And so in the QR code, the black one in the middle, the first pour session, I actually have scheduled two specific 1 hour segments to learn a little bit more about SIP Society and bring your questions. So if you want to scan that, fill out the form, and then pick, there's two that say KKG. One is on the 16th, one is on the 24th, I believe. And so those will be Kappa only. I'm not sharing those with anyone else, but I would love for you to connect and join. And of course, follow me on socials. And I think, Sophie, you guys are sending all those details out, but I would love to stay connected and continue to share in this wine journey. We've got many more journeys to take this summer than just those three.
Definitely. Thank you. It's also going to be in tomorrow's wrap-up email as well if you can't scan it right now. And thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. We hope you leave feeling inspired to continue exploring pairing moments at home, savor these new flavors with friends, and carry a little extra confidence at your next gathering. These events are made possible by our dues paying alumna. Your continued support allows us to keep creating engaging, joy-filled experiences like this one. If you need to pay your dues or want a quick refresher, you can always head to the Paid Dues tab on the Kappa website. Coming up on June 15th, this coming Monday, we have Building Your Brand conversation with Emily Brown at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then we are going to kick off July with a color analysis event led by Libby Vilanek on July 14th at 8 p.m. and close out the July season with a book club for A Killer Wedding with Joan O'Leary on the 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern. You're not going to want to miss any of these events. They're going to be so exciting. You'll find all the links to the upcoming events in the chat, the Flourish landing page, and on the Kappa website. So be sure to save your spot. With that, good night, sisters. Thank you so much, Christy,
Thanks,
for doing two
everyone.
back-to-back
Thanks for having
events
me.
tonight. It was
Oh, absolutely.
wonderful.
All right.
Good night,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.